Okay, we're recording. Welcome to the Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in a Meat Suit. Today, this is part of the Awakening Stories series. And today it's my pleasure to introduce a spiritual leader I've known of for many years, Dhyan Ji. Hello.
Hi,
How are
thanks
you?
for having me here. I'm
That's
good,
great.
thank you.
So, awakening, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, my awakening began when I was six, actually, and that's when I had my first sort of experience of feeling a sense of connection with everything around me. And then when I was seven, I went to live in a place called Rajneeshpuram, which was actually Osho's commune in Oregon in America. Some of you who see this might know the Wild Wild Country documentary that's been on Netflix. Well, yeah, I was there.
Wow.
Just for 3 months, but it was a life-changing 3 months. And then in 2012, through a lot of personal suffering, I was kind of at the end of my I'm not sure, patience isn't really the right word, but I'd been in a difficult relationship. I was bringing up a baby. I was on my own. There was a lot of stress on me. I was really having a lot of challenges, and I got to a point in my life where I knew there was another way to live, but I just didn't know how to make that change. I was very stuck in my head. There was a lot going on emotionally and mentally. And one day I just went upstairs to my room actually and got on my hands and knees, and I literally just asked God to show me another way. And a very interesting thing happened within sort of 24 hours. I can't say the exact time scale, but I was thrown into this really deep bliss, this deep peace and bliss. And I kind of call that my bliss phase because nothing phased me. I was just completely oblivious to any um, any challenges or anything that anybody said, or any of the relationship issues that I'd had around that time. At that point, everything started to really shift within me, and it was actually 2012. Um, and then that lasted for about 12 months. I didn't know whether it would go or stay. I'd never experienced it before in that way. Um, so I just did my best just to kind of be with the experience and not push it away or try and hold on to it in any way. It was a real learning just to be in that space of
Mm.
bliss and peace. And then, like, I thought that was enough. I didn't realize there'd be anything more, to be honest. I didn't even know that was going to happen. It was so unexpected. And there was so much grace involved with what happened there. In 2013, I was talking to a friend of mine because at this point I was running spiritual networking events at a place in Congleton called Blissland. And I was talking to a guest of mine. We were just having a conversation through Skype on the laptop. And there was a point in the conversation where we just kind of started to giggle. There was a kind of gap in the conversation, and just this joy just started to bubble up. And then when I closed the laptop, everything started to shift. It was quite a psychedelic experience, but there were no psychedelics involved at all, no drugs of any kind. And the first thing that happened was, as I shut the laptop and went to grab my cup of tea, um, I actually have a cup of tea here as well.
Me too.
I took a sip of the tea, yeah, and as I was holding the cup, I mean, maybe I'll demonstrate actually. As I was holding the cup, I looked into the cup and I could feel there was no separation between me, the cup, and the tea. And it
Mm.
was as if the entire universe was in the cup. I know it sounds, crazy, but that was my experience. And then I thought, okay, well, I've just got some herbal tea here. It was like peppermint tea or whatever it was. I thought, this is really unusual, really unusual experience. And then I looked over at a mirror. It was actually in my room again. I looked over at a mirror and I could see myself looking at myself from outside of myself.
Oh, yeah, I've had that.
So there was this, I'm connected to everything. Then there was the, I'm not my body because I'm seeing my body from outside of my body. And then I stood up, and at this point I was really like, okay, what is actually going on? And the walls around me started to move and vibrate and just literally dissolved. There's no other way I can say it really. They were just moving and vibrating, so I could see the, you know, almost like the particles of matter, of what everything's made of. And then they just dissolved, and I was cast into this space of just pure consciousness, nothingness. I was aware that I was in this space, but there was nothing else there. And there was no me as in my name or any identity of myself. And there was no one, you know, nothing in the house was there. It was just pure consciousness, open space, a bit like being, I guess, in the middle of space, essentially. And I recognized that mind is the source of all suffering. That was one of the other teachings that was given to me in those moments. So I could see that I was connected to everything, that I wasn't my body, that I was this pure consciousness. It was very much an experience of non-duality because there was nothing else there. No other beings appeared, nothing. There was just consciousness. And I was that, you know, is that phrase, isn't it? I am that. And it was very much the existential experience of that. Experiential, maybe that's a better word. Experience of knowing that, and a sense of coming home as well, of really recognizing something about that experience as being home. And then also a recognition that there's no death, because that consciousness is what I am, and there was no end or beginning to it. So I saw very clearly that there was no death, a death of the body, yes, but no death to me and no one else for that matter, although there wasn't anyone else there. So there was, yeah, a real sense of coming home, and there was laughter, there were tears. I was on my own at this point, and there was also just pure joy of, I felt that I'd been given a gift. I had no idea really what was happening, to be honest. I didn't know for quite a few months after it had happened what I'd actually experienced. And I don't know, some part of me decided to go downstairs. I think I felt hungry, so I went downstairs, and but I don't even have a memory of walking downstairs. It was just like I floated downstairs. Whether I did or not, who knows? But that was the sensation that I had. So I was very much not in my body. And I got this apple out of my bag, and then this apple was just so incredibly vibrant and beautiful. Again, it was just like holding the entire universe in my hand. I couldn't even understand how anyone could eat an apple because it was just so beautiful and just glowing, and just, it was really like seeing everything for the first time, but also knowing that that was the truth. And then, you know, everything became more vibrant. Everything became more alive. Plants looked more alive to me, people, energies. I began to feel more. I was already a very sensitive individual anyway. I'd got allergies and always been very in tune with people around me, and being in large crowds wasn't a brilliant experience because I would just always pick up on everything that was going on with everybody, and always quite psychic as well. So and these things kind of they got more intense as well after this experience. I was actually meant to pick my mum up at this particular time, and she phoned me and I said, I can't drive because I can't remember how to drive, so you'll have to come and pick me up. So she picked me up. I mean, I hardly remember getting in the car. I do remember being in a very well-known high street chemist, just laughing my head off, and my mum being completely unfazed by the fact that I was just in hysterics, and you know, I was just full of joy and everything was just funny, really. And then there came a point where, I don't know like how many hours later this was, but when I was able to watch the mind come back, I know that might sound a bit odd, and I still don't really know how to describe exactly what happened, but it was like the part of me that was able to then function.
Yeah.
Because I think if I'd stayed in that space, I wouldn't be functioning as a human being. There'd be I probably would have had to have people looking after me 24/7. But literally, because you know, I had no concept of where I was beginning or ending, and so then we can't really look after ourselves if we're in that space. So the mind came back in, but instead of just being in the mind, busy mind, like a lot of people experience that on a day-to-day basis, 24/7, there was a very clear experience of seeing the mind come in and being completely aware of it. And not only within me, but as time kind of went on from that experience, I was able to see it in people around me. And it took me quite a few months to integrate what had happened, because it was so literally mind-blowing that everything that I thought about myself, my life, people, the world, everything you can imagine that makes up our identification and our experience of life was just completely wiped away. And, you know, I couldn't understand why people would argue. I couldn't understand anything to do with politics. There were so many things that made no sense to me whatsoever anymore. And I didn't even relate to myself. I couldn't relate to this idea of me that I had been prior to that experience. And so I had to drop my name. That was the process of dropping my name and taking on my spiritual heritage that I've received from Osho, because I just couldn't relate to that person anymore. And if people would talk about me, it was like, who is that? She doesn't exist anymore.
So she kind of died in a way.
Yeah, and that was it. I died in the body, essentially. Wow. I died before death. So I had the experience of dying, but obviously I didn't leave my body entirely because I'm still here. Just about.
Allegedly, this is Zoom. I don't know if you're really there. You could be 3D.
Yeah. So it was a profoundly life-changing experience, and I just did not know what to do with it for quite a while. And I was running these events. And
sorry to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
You were working spiritual work before that event.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had a very deep experience as a kid.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you ever? Were you ever like a normal person at any point? Did you do a normal job or anything like that? Or
I tried to. Kept failing miserably, much to everybody else's annoyance. Like, why can't she stick with this, and why can't she just do a 9 to 5? No, the thing that I realised was I just didn't fit in, and there was nothing wrong with that. It just means that the box that society has created for us, we're not all meant to be squashed into that box.
I don't think any of us are.
Exactly. So you know, but some people are okay with that, so they'll go along with it, and of course that's their choice. But for me, it was just being called. I just kept being called to in different ways in my life, you know, and it really did start when I was 6 in the playground being bullied.
Mm.
Can laugh about it now. It wasn't a very nice experience, really.
No, it's not.
Some kids had written something on the wall about me. They called me a pig, which at the time I felt really upset about, and really, you know, and I was only 6, so I was very small, but now I wouldn't actually look at that in the same way. It's interesting how perspective changes so much, but at the time it felt hurtful. Like, why would I be compared to an animal? That's not very kind. So I was very upset and angry, and I moved to another part of the playground just to be on my own, and I was just crying my eyes out. And I felt the wind move around me, and there was some kind of feeling that the wind around me was actually trying to calm me and comfort me.
Mm.
And I know it probably sounds a little odd and maybe even a bit crazy, but as a 6-year-old, that was my experience, that the wind was moving around me to comfort me in those moments and say, look, I'm here and I'm a part of you. And there was this recognition that happened within me in those moments that I began to play with the wind. So I actually told the wind to blow, and it did. And I told it to stop, and it did.
Like the great airbender.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't, you know, I don't know how to explain these things. And then I looked up at the trees, and they were all moving, and the sky and the clouds were moving, and there was a real understanding that, you know, I'm a part of all of this. I'm
We all
not
are.
a separate
So
little being.
yeah,
All of this is here for me as much as I'm here for it. So
and that's
really,
what
that was kind of the seed was sown. Then there was something in those moments of deep despair and anger and upset, that shifted something within me and awoke something within me.
and that inevitably led to you doing the work that you do, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, over time, what's happened is I've had, of course, many other experiences, but those were kind of the main ones. And after my awakening in 2013, it became clear to me that actually the reason that had happened to me, because at first I was like, okay, why did this happen? What was the point in that happening to me? I'm just a normal kind of human being with no, you know, I felt like, what was the purpose of that? Because I'm sure not everybody has that experience, although I didn't even know that for sure. But there was a sense of, why me? Like, and why now? And what is the purpose of this? And then from that, after integrating it, which I did for around 12 months, I think it was at least 12 months before I actually spoke about it to anyone apart from my mum. Um, and then I began to share the story. I set up a YouTube channel as well, and prior to that, and I shared the story on there. And then it became clear that my experience was actually to help other people
Yeah.
to move into that space, to actually transition into that presence and that space of awakening. And maybe even if they were going through some similar experiences or some challenges in life, or they were very much on a spiritual path but just kind of didn't really know, or they were just searching for something. So all of a sudden people started to come to me in very unusual ways. One of the ways was somebody actually saw me in their dream, and then they decided to come and work with me, and someone else literally heard me calling them. I mean, you know, I don't have any explanation for a lot of these things. People saw me in India, although I wasn't there. I was actually in the UK. I had quite a few experiences of people seeing me in different places where I wasn't actually, and it was very confusing for the people that thought they'd seen me. Anyway, So I would end up going into a lot of people's dreams, or they would see something or hear something, and then they would want to come and sit with me and work with me. And I didn't really know how even to explain what I was doing. And actually, I still struggle with that a little bit now, I have to be honest. Because it's so beyond the mind and beyond words. It's like we're trying to formulate words and something to explain it, but actually once you do that, then people are in the minds, they're in the concepts, and that's not where it's the whole point of that, is to get out of that. So it's about emptying the cup, it's emptying us of all the things that we've taken on, all the things we know, all the things, all our beliefs, all our conditionings, all of that just gets emptied out, and you just become this space of pure presence and being. And so what happened was people would come to me. Not all of them, of course, would experience this, but a lot of them would. And so it became evident to me that that's the work that was most important. And I have literally watched these people's lives completely transform beyond any recognition of who they were when I first saw them.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that's all down to me. Of course, it's all grace, it's all God. It's through me. More than anything, it's through me. It's not me, because obviously I know that I'm pure consciousness. So
well, that brings me to 2020, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a number of angles to 2020. There's the Great Awakening, as referred to by QAnon, which I think it's a spiritual awakening, but at the same time, it's also waking up to a lot of things that have been hidden for a long period of time. Then there's moving from 3D to 5D, and there's the lifting of the veil and the ascension. And all of these things, to me, seem to be actually converging and all actually the same thing. How have you experienced, since the virus started, how have you experienced things? What do you see? What do people obviously been coming to you, I assume, through this period.
Yeah.
What's been your experience of the last crazy 6 months? And where are we going?
Well, I'm not going
to have all the answers. I'm just interested.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it's all been plain sailing and I've enjoyed every minute. Because I would be lying.
Yeah.
The one thing that was very, very clear to me at the beginning was it was time for me to really stand up and help and assist. Because before, I think I'd been trying to reach people, but they just weren't ready. They were just, stuck in the daily lives of stuff and mind stuff and society. But of course, the whole situation, the way it played out, it's been throwing people onto themselves, and they've had to look at themselves, look at their lives, look at what they want in their lives, look at the truth of what life even is and what it means to them. Every angle of life has been explored by, I guess, millions of people over the last few months, because their lives have been turned upside down and inside out, and what they believed and how they believed everything to be, and how they believed everything would maybe even continue, and the ideas of security that people had, which I also know is, security is just an idea, it's not a truth, have been taken away. And, so I think it is a massive awakening. And it's a massive awakening because people have to look at themselves. They have to ask who they are, why they're here, what's going on, what is the purpose to all of this. And the world that we know and have known for so long is completely changing before our eyes. And it's changing because we're all changing. And this is the point. For it to happen on such a massive scale, it's happening within each and every one of us on a massive scale. So what I actually feel about this time, and I don't know whether I'm right or not, but I got a few words at the beginning. Sometimes I guess I call them like downloads. I just get intuitive things given to me every so often. I'm hoping I can remember them now. One was the second coming, Christ consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was It's a Reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
And Holocaust, unfortunately, was one I heard that I didn't like the sound of at all. And the fourth one was Heaven on Earth.
Oh, that sounds a bit more optimistic.
So my feeling is, and also I do know from the yogic calendar that I don't know if you know this, Mark, we're in Kali Yuga.
Oh, I have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kali Yuga, although I'm no expert on this, by the way.
I'm not very good at yoga, so I don't do it very often.
Yeah, well, it's the astrological forecast, and there are various phases in this, and they last a very long time, like thousands of years, and we're in the end stages of Kali Yuga.
Is it is that to do with the 26,000 year cycle?
You probably know a bit more than me then. But yeah, it's something like that. It's a really long time, and we are coming through the end of Kali Yuga, and it is actually the most uncertain, the most unstable, and the most chaotic time for human beings on the earth. And I think that's pretty obvious, really.
That kind of matches the description of 2020 so far, yeah.
So that's why it's so challenging at the moment, because what comes after that is Sat Yuga, and that is heaven on earth.
Okay, so that's that's the golden age, right? That's
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So, do you? I mean, this has been a very much a kind of spiritual version of events that you've described. How do you sit as someone who works the way you do with all the revelations that are coming out online that keep getting censored and squashed? And because I know we're friends on Facebook, and I've noticed some of your reactions to things over the last 6 months have been interesting. So I'm interested in that as well, because what I see a lot of is people struggling with those things because they're they're hugely horrific, right? How do we, how do people get through that? Because it's kind of polarizing people at the moment, as far as I can see. You've got people really doubled down on saying that's a load of rubbish, wear my mask and do all of that and live in a state of fear. And other people coming out into the world with their eyes blinking like they've just seen the sun for the first time, which is quite beautiful, even though it's a horrific information that they're taking on board to get to that point.
Is there something specific that you want to ask me?
Oh, I started with a question and I rambled and then I went down a couple of cul-de-sacs, which I do quite a lot. How are you personally dealing with that stuff? And what's your advice to anybody that's finding it difficult at the moment with their own self development, if you like? And do you feel optimistic about where we go? Well, I think you do, but
I do. But I know. I also know that to get there, we have literally got to go through hell, and that's where we're at the moment.
It's interesting. I had a vision the other day that was really, really unbelievably strong and clear, and it was burning buildings and people jumping out of the windows. It was so horrific. I had to just snap out of it, and I didn't like that. But I want these episodes to be optimistic because I feel optimistic, and I agree with you actually. I think that's exactly what is happening. We are going through a kind of hell.
Yeah. I think it's out of the words that I was given. It's the reckoning. There has to be, in order for there to be massive change, there has to be chaos.
Interesting, because what does it say on the dollar bill? Order through chaos, which is the Illuminati sort of. But their chaos is their chaos that they want to create their order. I know this is an interesting conversation I'm having with myself all the time, about whether we're creating them as well because we're creating the universe, or whether that's an external force coming in. What do you think about that?
That's a really well. Okay, we could put it like this. There is the collective subconscious.
That's the answer.
Yeah, that's your answer.
That's it.
Really, you know, we are all light, but we also have shadow. And there is, you know, there is darkness, because we wouldn't even recognize light if there wasn't darkness.
Have you you heard of the Hopi prophecy of the eagle and the condor?
No, I haven't heard
Is
of
that
that.
the Hopi tribe, Hopi?
Oh, the Hopi. I've heard of the
This
Hopis.
is
Yeah.
the time of the eagle and the condor, and I think that represents the sort of, you know, the dark and the light, and the left and right brain coming together. Because I think often one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I wanted to get more into my right brain, because I'm right brained, but I'm also still quite stuck in the left, and I'm much happier in the right brain. So this is about kind of like getting into that right brain state more often. What I think you described in 2012 was just purely being in your right brain, and that is heaven on earth. That is heaven on earth. I think it's actually to do with, I think the Bible and everything is an allegory for our brains, because we're creating everything from that. And if we're stuck in the left brain, it's all facts and figures and numbers and doing what you're told and everything else, and that's just a horrible place to be. And when I look out the window and I see people walking down the street with a mask on, I'm just like, it's just pure left. It's like extreme left brain. Horrible thing that we're going to get annoyed with enough to start looking internally more, right?
Yeah. When we go through the process of awakening, part of the process of awakening is opening the heart and mind, and then it's very difficult to do actions just for yourself, or to you know, to just, you want to serve. Let's say that's probably the best way to say it. There is something that arises from the process of awakening that allows you to understand the depth of connection with you and every other being, because you're all one, essentially one consciousness in many individuations, in many different forms. And through that experience comes this need and want to serve. And I think the more people that awaken, that experience that, the less harm they can do to others, because they know that whatever they do to someone else, they actually are doing to themselves and their own family and their own community and everything else. And I think this is why awakening is so prevalent at this time, because the alternative is that everyone stays in the ego. There's nothing wrong with the ego, but obviously there are various different stages to the ego, and the people who are really living in fear and are don't understand their connectedness with others, and are not living in their heart, and are very much in the what can I do for me, but maybe even to an extreme, they are, you know, perpetuating that cycle of the ego and fear and the darkness, essentially. So when we awaken, we are holding more light, and that's what's happening at the moment. Many of us have been called forth, if you like, to hold more light, so that we can raise the vibration of ourselves, each other, our communities, our towns, our cities, our countries, and the world. So this is kind of my take on this, is that that's the most important thing for humanity at this time now. Yes, there's a lot of horrible stuff coming up to be seen, to be looked at, but it has to come up. It has to be seen. It has to be recognised for what it is, because only when that happens can we make sure that we do not do that again. But whilst it's all hidden, nobody knows. Nobody even understands what's going on. So it's like the light is plunging into all these dark corners, all these dark places, so that we can really see the scope of what we've created here as human beings, as humanity.
Yeah.
And, you know, where we really want to go over the next, 29,000 years or whatever, we don't want to repeat that cycle again.
So Could you tell us how people can connect with you if they want to go further?
Yeah, well, I offer live meditations most mornings on my Dhyan Awakening Love page on Facebook around 8 to 8:30. So I try and be there on time, but I go with the flow, so not always at the same time. People can also check my website out, which is www.awakeninglove.co.uk. And you can connect with me on Facebook, or I think that's the easiest one, really, actually.
Yeah, well, I'll put the links below this video, but I really appreciate you telling that story. It's quite amazing the way you described that, and I'm glad that you're. I think you're right. I think it's we're going to go through a lot of crap but it's an optimistic outcome, and I'm glad to hear that from someone like you.
Yeah, it's the collective subconscious, and so we really are weeding the garden, as somebody once said to me. You are weeding the garden, you are watering the flowers. We are collectively now weeding the garden and watering the flowers. That's the awakening for humanity.
That's what I'm going to call this podcast. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.